Hello and welcome to Reimagining Cyber. Producer Ben here, and I am, of course, joined by our resident cybersecurity expert, Rob Aragao. Now, Rob, before we go any further, let's talk about your current location, because normally you're in a very pleasant business-like office/recording studio, but not today, because it looks a lot more sparkly where you are.
There's a little glitter, Ben, for sure. It's the great city called Las Vegas for a conference that we have going on, actually the Open Text World Conference, and always a good time of the year to be out here and get to meet with the different organizations that we work closely with. So in the midst of it all, time for a podcast episode for sure, Ben.
And one of the keynote speakers, or one of the speakers there, it's Venus Williams, you say?
That is right. Venus Williams is one of our keynote speakers, which is absolutely exciting. And she actually just released a book, so I'm sure that'll be a part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, a little peek behind the curtains of how things work here at Reimagining Cyber. Rob and I were discussing that just before we came on, and I misunderstood him, and I thought he meant that Venus Williams had written a book about cybersecurity, which sadly is not the case. But watch this space if she ever does. As Rob said to me, she'll be on the show.
Right, Ben, for sure. I wish it was a cybersecurity topic that she was conversing, because I would run right up to her afterwards and say, we need to get you on Reimagining Cyber.
Anyway, what's on the agenda today?
So, Ben, there's been a lot of conversation that has been going on within the industry for a little bit of time, and more specifically over the past few months. There's been several events. I was kind of mentioning this to you previously that I've been a part of. I've been on panels, and we've seen this topic circled around this convergence that's occurring as it relates to identity, specifically identity security and data, and securing that data, of course. And so I thought, why not share a little bit of what we've been having these conversations, a lot of kind of the reasons why this is becoming a very hot topic, and some thoughts just around, kind of what we need to start doing to really start actually converging these things going forward. So to start, historically, when you look at security from an identity perspective, as well as a data side, they are absolutely two separate, distinct kind of elements, if you will, or silos of how teams are those areas and not connecting them with one another. And so, you have a team on the kind of left side, if you will, that's dealing with identity access management, which means, typically how am I actually maybe provisioning a new user, a new employee into our organization? What applications do they have access to? What data will they be granted access to? And in essence, that typically kind of maps into some policies that can be assigned based on, again, what role in the organization that individuals being hired into. So let's say HR, finance, if you will. And you continue to monitor the level of access that they have, what they also have access into on an ongoing basis. And many of the requirements from an audit perspective and even regulatory requirements call out the attestation that you are on an ongoing basis reviewing that the rights of the users are still appropriate, meaning that if there are role changes in the organization, right, you need to obviously remove what they should no longer have access into, and obviously provision them to have access to the new environments or applications that they're going to be working on. If they leave the organization completely, right, same principle. I need to ensure that I'm actually removing those rights for that user. Typically, I'm disabling the account as well, of course, but I am ensuring that I'm removing the rights.
Because if you don't do that right, you could have all sorts of different security issues coming down the line.
Someone can get in and take advantage of that account that is actually no longer, or has not been disabled, and then has access into whatever they had in the past. So again, it becomes a potential way into the organization. And there's different aspects, of course, of identity and access management that go on. But that's kind of in the top viewpoint from historically what we've seen there. On the right-hand side of the equation, there's the data side of it. And the data side obviously comes in many different kind of aspects. It could be around what data that we have out there. We've talked many times in the past on the podcast as it relates to what is sensitive data that our organization holds. That could be, patient information, right, of yours and I's, Ben. It could be, information that's, relative to how we actually bring new solutions, new products to market. So that's our intellectual property, right? Designs and things of that nature. It could be other sensitive data that's relative to our customers as well. Where does that data actually exist? And having visibility on an ongoing basis as to where sensitive data is actually introduced into different environments. And those environments are rapidly expanding. Historically, they've been tied into specific on-prem environments. So you have a better set of controls, but now they're very quickly moving to the cloud. And so you therefore don't have as best visibility as you had in the past. And some serious concerns come with that. So again, you have to have a way to be able to continuously assess, understand where there may be sensitive data that exists. The other aspect of that is having ways to classify those different data elements for an organization. So what that means is, there could be, again, lines of businesses in an organization. Let's say it's a bank, and they have, of course, different lines of business. In each of those lines of businesses, you're going to go and understand with the stakeholders what information is specifically relevant for their line of business. What is sensitive data? What is regulated data? What is it that you need to be very well aware of? This information actually exists somewhere. This information needs to be actually obviously properly secured or protected. And you have the control mechanisms wrapped around that. And a lot of that, Ben, typically is initially discussions, conversations that, someone in the cybersecurity, someone within the privacy teams, get involved in those business stakeholder discussions to give guidance on here are the different things you should be thinking about. Here are some examples that ultimately allow them to kind of define, if you will, a catalog of what those elements are that then applies to the technology coming in and supporting, assessing, understanding where that exists, again, continuously. You can then take actions. Once you understand where that data actually resides, you understand if it actually isn't protected, right? We can apply things out there to protect that, secure that information, encrypt that data as an example of that as well. My point is that as you're hearing me discuss this, Ben, right, you can see that these are really two different distinct areas historically of how you manage the ongoing aspect of, a user identity. It could be a customer consumer identity. It could be a machine identity with IoT devices as well. And then again, on the right-hand side of it, managing that data on an ongoing basis, protecting that data.
And I guess all of these, Rob, connect the dots back to privacy requirements.
And that's really what I think has become the driver behind this need for convergence of the two. And when I say convergence of the two, I don't mean that these roles of managing the identities and data distinctly are actually going to combine into one role. I mean that the communication, the collaboration is critically important as we move forward. And the privacy elements that we see historically, started back in 2018 with GDPR. And then we see in other countries, we see PIPTA, we see stateside here with California and other states all having their own specific consumer privacy regulations that is in essence in place to protect us as consumers and what data actually is out there for organizations on us. It also calls out, if you think about it, not just the data side of it, but of course the identity, because I need to know who you are to grant you access to this information. I need to know who you are when someone maybe asks me, hey, what rights do I have within the environment? Or better yet, as part of again, privacy requirement, data subject access requests. You and I could call up a company that maybe, for example, is headquartered in California and say, I need you to tell me what information you actually have on me. And they need to abide by that regulation to produce a report that says this is actually information that I have on Rob Aragao. And I can then tell them, you should no longer have any of that information on me. I want you to actually go get rid of it. And that is what's called the right to be forgotten. Again, under the regulations that are out there from, as I mentioned, GDPR, CCPA, and others, you as a consumer have the right to ask for the information and then to require them to get rid of the information that has kind of those connection points back to knowing more about you, that maybe what you would like. So again, that's the privacy element as I look at it as being the key that's intersecting identity with data. So it's explicitly called out. I need to understand what data, I need to understand who the identities are to the data, and that's a key driving force. That being said, we're seeing is that anchor that probably has been in play for, I don't know, 3 years roughly, is really starting to kind of break down that barrier in between the two silos of identity and data management. And I think the really positive outcome that we're starting to see is that drives us to much, much better security. So yeah, sure, the privacy aspects of it, the compliance reporting, the auditing requirements being met, that's all good. That's a benefit that we get, kind of a side benefit that we get by really driving a program that is starting to converge the two together to ensure that we're ultimately being better from a security point of view of the information we have for organizations. And so, if you flash back to midsummer of 2023 and being in Vegas, right, as I am now, we had a string of major security breaches at Caesars as an example. MGM is another example. And all of them actually started on the identity side. They started by literally being a call into the help desk. So an aspect of it being social engineering, but ultimately gaining access to the credentials of a user or users to ultimately get to what they wanted, which again was the data. And so connecting those two from a security point of view, that's what I'm getting at. It's so critically important because yes, you're going to get the benefits of achieving and helping you deal with the regulators, deal with the privacy requirements, and so on and so forth. But you're going to get the real benefit of actually better protecting your environment, your customer information, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to raise that really as a key topic today, Ben, because it's coming very, very fast. The conversations absolutely are centered around this convergence.
What's the reaction been when you've brought up the subject in the panels that you were talking about?
It definitely gets everyone engaged and involved, and kind of the light bulb is going off, and they're saying, yeah, that absolutely makes sense, right? We've been doing these things separately. Yeah, they're still kind of going to continue in a certain fashion to be separate, but the importance of bringing them together from a collaboration, proper communication, working with one another to again connect the dots on those relationships between the identity and the data are going to drive better efficiencies in how we report from an audit requirement, but most importantly, secure our environments overall.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about. Well, what I'm going to do is take a look through the Reimagining Cyber back catalogue and find a few episodes that are pertinent to today's discussion. So do make sure that you check out the show notes for the links. So finally then, Rob, what is next for you in Vegas?
Next for me is actually more customer engagement. We've got a lineup of meetings with partners as well. And also, just some great sessions that our teams here are delivering across the board for all of what we do within OpenText. But obviously, for my world, is very focused on what we can do in bettering cyber for the different organizations we work with.
Do you get to get out and about and enjoy the place? No. You're pretty much in the exhibition center.
I pretty much land, get to the hotel, the Venetian in this case, similar to last year, and spend a wonderful 3 days with the fake air that they pump in here, and then realize there is actually real air outside at the end of the third day.
Life on the road as a cybersecurity guru. That's what that is, Rob.
All is well, Ben. It's all good.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ben.
Well, thanks for listening to Reimagining Cyber. We're going to be back next week where Rob will be talking to another great guest. Do follow or subscribe to the show to make sure you get to listen as soon as it is available. Goodbye.